Hey, Kevin here, top 100 financial advisor and best-selling author, and we are here to talk about the stock market. Today, I want to discuss and explain a little bit about what tapering is. So you've probably seen, especially if you're looking at the market today, which is the 18th. I'm recording this pretty late, so you'll probably see it on the 19th, maybe the 20th. We'll see. But the market dropped today, as at present, the market dropped because the Fed is expected to, quote unquote, taper, and that has spooked some people. So let's talk about what tapering is, why it's important, and what all this stuff really means. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is, number one, it's in the news. If it's in the news and we don't know what it is, we need to explain it. But also, I think it makes you a better investor when you understand what's going on. Because when you don't understand what's going on, and let's say you started investing on, I don't know, Tuesday, and then Wednesday the market falls again 2 days in a row, you're like, what is this? I don't like this, and I'm just going to sell at a loss. When you understand what's going on, you're less likely, in my view, to react negatively or take the wrong reaction, the wrong actions. So let's go ahead and talk about what it is. Not really a common term, so don't feel bad if you don't know it, but I'll give you a very, very high-level overview of what it is. So step one, what is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve essentially controls the money and helps to stabilize the economy. There are two ways that we do this. One, you've got Congress. They pass tax laws and all those things to help, they're the ones who give stimulus checks, which help to boost the economy. That's one way that you can help the finances of the entire country. But the other way is the Federal Reserve. And they have, checks and balances, but other advantages that you don't have in Congress. So you get to avoid the entire politics stuff. You don't have to do no votes. You don't have to pass laws. You get to control things a little more, I guess direct is the right term, direct and indirect. So the two primary ways that the Federal Reserve does this is, number one, they have a lever to control interest rates to a degree. So last year, you can easily Google this, they cut interest rates to historic lows. And what does that mean? That means that people are more incentivized to buy or borrow. For example, we just got a house. We had to borrow money to do that. We got to borrow at 2.8%. When my parents bought a house, I don't know what it was, but I bet you it was higher than that, right? So I had some comments that said that their parents had to buy it at 7%, at 5%, which is double the interest rate that I would have to pay today, which is a lot, right? But it incentivizes me to do that. If I had a business loan or wanted to buy a car, it's way cheaper for me to buy now. And when I buy stuff, just like you give that business owner money, and when they do with that money is they go buy other things to help improve their business, and that's how the economy rolls. So that's one way that they do it, and they've already cut interest rates. You can only cut but so much, right? Like, there's a case, and we're not going to get into this because this is beyond basic level, but you can cut to negative level. You don't really want to do that, but you can only cut but so much, right? You don't want to just floor interest rates to zero, and then you still need stuff and you can't go anywhere else. So that's one thing. They can control interest rates. The next thing they can do is adjust their balance sheet. So when we say balance sheet, this is basically every week, I think you can get access to the Federal Reserve's balance sheets, which says this is what you own, this is what you owe. I can make some adjustments from that. So what we do, or what the Federal Reserve does, is they can buy assets. And when we say assets, we're talking like bonds, mortgage-backed securities. We can do a different episode on that. But basically, they're buying things. They're buying assets. They're buying bonds. And just like I would buy a stock. They essentially do almost the exact same thing. But when they buy stuff, they give people what? Money. Right? And they're getting from institutions, individuals, wherever they're getting it from, they are giving somebody some money to do that. And that means they are growing their balance sheet, and that's what they do. That helps to stimulate the economy, because just like when I buy a car or I buy a house, I'm giving somebody some money, and they're taking that and they're growing their business and circulating that money through the economy. So when we say this for the Federal Reserve, when they grow their balance sheet, they are increasing the money supply. That's the way that they describe that. So that's great. Well, in a nutshell, when the economy is low, that is a generally great thing to do, and it helps to avoid depression, which we did do. All right, so that's what it means. But now we are starting to taper, or there are signals that we could start to taper, which means you're still buying stuff, but you're not buying at the exact same levels that you were. And this is what scares the stock market. There are two ways to look at that. Number one, I can look at it and say, well, if you're tapering, you're cutting back your buying habits, that means that the market is just the market, but the economy, you might be pretty solid, right? You might be okay. You don't need me to continue to prop up the entire economy by just buying stuff to help everybody else out. I can take a few steps back. That is a generally good sign. Eventually, not now, but eventually, rates are going to climb back up to whatever it is that new normal is going to be, which also is a decent sign that we don't need all these extra things to help the economy grow, that it can start to grow on its own. It's another way to also reduce inflationary fears. Remember, we've been talking about inflation for quite a while now, about how things are getting way too expensive way too quickly. Well, that happens when you cut interest rates. That happens when not everybody, but most people are getting their jobs back and rushing into the market all at the same time. I'm just talking about markets for houses, markets for used cars, markets for rental cars, which are really expensive. I had to buy one this weekend. Not happy about that. Anyway, that happens when you are flooding the market with so much cash. And it happens when you are growing your balance sheet and buying assets, and you're doing this at the $1 trillion level, and you've been doing it for months, right? So now that we're starting to cut things back, or now the Fed rather is starting to cut things back, the market doesn't necessarily like it. If you are someone who's receiving money, or someone is buying something from me every day and they're buying a lot of it and they buy less of it, I'm not happy about that, right? So the market is reacting in that way. Again, I think long-term things are going to be fine. Short-term could be a little rocky right now. I think, just as I do every Friday, you want to continue to DCA. You may want to consider to look out for some deals. You find a stock that tends to be a little bit cheaper than what it normally would, might be a day to start investing in that and continue investing, because this tapering thing could be around for a while. They have not officially started it, but you've got some experts and some people who work at the Federal Reserve in different regions say it could start as early as September. I've seen as late as early 2022. I've also seen by the end of 2021. So the tapering thing is going to be around for a while. Again, I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. I think it's normal. You cannot sustain buying up assets forever and ever and ever, and you also can't sustain having really dirt cheap interest rates for eternity. It doesn't work like that. You do have to taper back and let things go back to normal. We saw this in 2008. Rates were also really cheap back then. The Federal Reserve did grow their balance sheet back then, and eventually things went back to normal, right? And then we hit the coronavirus pandemic. Things went back down, started to grow the balance sheet, reduce those interest rates. Things started to improve a little bit, and then we just kind of go back to normal. So we've seen inflation kind of drop off just a bit. It's still there, and it's still really in the housing market and the rental market. It's really, really hot there still. But overall, all the other prices, it's kind of not as bad as what we thought. So we think we have peaked. So we kind of hit a peak. It comes down a little bit. Doesn't mean it's back to normal, but things are coming down from what we have seen so far. The job market is steadily, it's better than what it was this time last year, and things are improving. Doesn't mean that everything's over. It doesn't mean that everything is back. And there are still some fears that the Delta variant can derail all of this once school starts. So we'll see. So these are all things you want to keep on your radar. Just wanted to kind of let you know what's going on out there and what to expect as an investor. So you're going to hear a lot more about this tapering conversation really between now and 2022 until we start to see it happen. The market is probably going to react in a negative way. Does not mean it's going to be negative between now and January, but it could be a bit rocky. So do keep your eye on it. The market will also get tired of it and just perform like it's been performing and not really care. But you're going to start to see these rocky things. The minute that Jerome Powell, he's the Fed chair, talks, you want to be tuned into it and just really watch what the market does, because it's going to be a huge reaction whenever that thing may occur. So that is it for me. It's a really long explanation, but I did kind of want to give you some context around it. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.